Discover 8 spine-chilling paranormal encounters caught on camera, sinister ghosts exposed. The Johnsons thought they found their dream home, a quaint little house in a peaceful Columbus suburb. Mark and Sarah, along with their children, Emma and Jake, settled in with dreams of new beginnings. Until, that is, the haunting revealed the truth. Each night, the walls creaked in ways that sent shivers down their spines, and shadows flitted just beyond their line of sight. It wasn't long before the flickering lights turned their cozy sanctuary into a realm of terror. One evening, as they sat down for dinner, the lights overhead blinked violently, illuminating the room in disorienting flashes. Heart rate spiked as Emma dropped her fork, her voice shaking. "Did you see that?" A heavy silence hung thick in the air as they exchanged nervous glances. It felt like the house was breathing, alive with unwelcome spirits. Mark brushed it off. "Old houses do that," he insisted. But Sarah felt the chill creeping beneath her skin, the gnawing fear that something sinister dwelled within their home. Determined to conquer her fears, Sarah suggested they set up security cameras. What they found was far more grotesque than any imagined burglar. One night, the footage revealed an ethereal figure, pale, transparent, with hollow eyes. It flickered in and out of existence, weeping silently as it hovered above the children's toys. Sarah gasped as the spectral visage seemed to search for something, and a cold terror seeped into her bones. "Wow, must be fake." Mark clenched his jaw, but the anxious tremor in his voice betrayed him. "Let's just wait." The footage of the moaning apparition cut off abruptly, and a wave of dread slid over them. Before they could process their growing panic, they approached Chief Henderson, hoping for answers. He was charming at first, expertly masking his dismissive nature as he smirked and waved their concerns aside. "Oh, folks, you know how stories grow in small towns," he said, deepening the shadows in Sarah's heart. The chief's eyes darkened when they asked about the town's history. "Some things are better left in the past," he muttered, the undercurrent of his tone sending electrifying fear through them. Whispers began to ooze from neighbors they thought friendly. Late-night conversations, hushed tones, and nervous glances filled the air like a growing storm. Families had fled, their homes lay vacant, leaving secrets buried deep beneath the roots of their community. Mark scratched his head, that skepticism beginning to crack. They plunged into the clutches of folklore, stories of vengeance rising from the earth, ties of the living intertwining with the dead. Each whisper echoed like a grip tightening around their throats. With every creak of the floorboards at night, uncertainty grew. Just as they reached a breaking point, a diary unearthed from the attic revealed more horrors than they could have imagined, connections to Chief Henderson that left them chilled to the bone. The night air rattled as a resounding bang shook the walls, plunging them into darkness once more, as their security footage flickered ominously and revealed a sinister grin lurking in the corner. This wasn't just fear of the unknown anymore, it was something far more lethal. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The atmosphere thickened with dread as they each grappled with the revelation. The house was more than just haunted. It was a web of conspiracies and bitter pasts, now converging on the Johnsons. Gripped by fear, their breaths heavy and quick, they realized their haven was a breeding ground of unrest, veering dangerously close to the brink of despair. Would they fight for their home, or was the road ahead filled with more darkness than they ever imagined? Shadows loomed across the walls, their future unclear, as the camera flickered ominously, leaving the depths of their terror monstrous and unresolved. The next morning, sunlight barely penetrated the thick clouds that hung low over the Johnson home. Emma sat at the kitchen table, hands clenched around a mug of cocoa, her anxious gaze darting from the window to the front door. "Do you think it'll come back?" she whispered, her voice trembling like a fragile leaf. Mark stared at the cereal boxes, each labeled with promises of happiness and health, yet all he felt was the weight of dread pressing down on him. "We have to figure this out," he said finally, his voice low. Sarah stood by the sink, looking out into the foggy day, her mind racing through the diary's revelations. Chief Henderson had not simply swept their worries away, he had hidden something dangerous. Jake, trying to mask his fear, burst out, "Can't we just leave?" But the truth was, running away wouldn't solve anything. The shadows in their home felt embedded in their very souls. With resolve, they decided to delve deeper into the past of their house and the town. Mark retrieved his laptop and began searching for records. Old newspaper clippings detailed the history of tragic events, disappearances, a fire that had taken more than just property, and townsfolk rumored to have vanished into thin air. The sinister pattern was hard to ignore. Sarah's skin crawled as she clicked on a link about the previous owners. "They were a family of 4, just like us," she murmured softly. Her voice was almost lost to the winds that howled down the street, wrapping around their home like a palpable presence. Suddenly, a loud crash sounded from the attic, echoing through the walls. Heart racing, Sarah exchanged panicked looks with Mark, and they instinctively moved toward the staircase. It felt like stepping into the maw of a wild beast. Mark turned to Emma and Jake. "Stay here," he ordered, though he knew the weight of those words meant little against the blanket of fear. He moved up the stairs cautiously, his every step creaking, protesting against the extra weight of dread. The attic door was ajar, wide enough to invite curious whispers. Strange sounds, scraping, dragging, slithered through the opening. He reached for the doorknob, feeling icy currents shiver along his spine. He turned it slowly, stepping into the dimly lit space. Dust motes danced around him as he surveyed the chaos left behind. Boxes, old furniture upturned, and something moved in the corner. The cold air shifted suddenly, like a breath taken by an unseen entity. Mark felt his pulse in his throat, and he held his breath. Then he saw it. A small, dust-covered mirror that had fallen from a table. It gleamed dully, and as he approached, a chill washed over him. He picked it up, exposing a tarnished reflection of himself, but behind him, a faint outline sparkled, whispering unholy invitations. "Mark?" The voice was delicate, yet heavy with sorrow. He jerked around, but the attic was empty, save for a faint echo that seemed to wrap him in despair. Panic coursed through him as he scrambled down the stairs. "Sarah, I saw something!" he shouted, breathless. But as he reached her, their cameras buzzed back to life, flickering against the dim light. The screens filled with static, and then, like an old film, they played. It was footage from the night before, showing ghostly fingers curling around Emma's toy, a stuffed bear wedged quietly in a darkened corner. Behind the bear stood a shadow, its outline tinged with malevolence. "Mark, what is that?" Sarah cried, her voice wavering as they were each pulled into the haunting visuals. And then it clicked. The sinister grin they had glimpsed before was no longer a secret. It was an omen of what was to come. As the last frame flickered, the screen froze, and a new shadow emerged. This one was darker, more defined, creeping toward Emma's sleeping room. The air tightened with terror as realization hit them. What they had fought to uncover was nothing but a prelude to something far more horrific. The cycle of darkness was not just a legacy of lost souls. It was relentless, ready to claim new victims. "Get out!" Mark finally screamed, lungs burning. But as he turned to grab the kids, the door slammed shut, locking them in. And in the suffocating quiet that followed, a single chilling laugh echoed through the house, resonating with evil intent, as if it had waited all this time for the Johnson family to discover the darkest truth of all. What had they awakened? The house felt alive, a dark, pulsating entity that thrummed with anticipation. Mark's heart pounded fiercely as he lunged for the door again. It was solid, impenetrable, mocking his desperation. He spun around, eyes wide, searching for any route of escape. The air felt thick and cold, almost suffocating, laced with the scent of mildew and dread. "Emma! Jake! We have to get out of here!" he shouted, his voice cracking, panic rising in the back of his throat. Sarah tugged at his arm, her eyes glistening with an unshed terror. "Don't you hear that?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. The scratching noise from the attic had transformed into a low, rhythmic thumping, resonating through the walls, each beat seeming to taunt them. "Listen, I think we need to check Emma's room," Mark stammered, clutching Sarah's hand. The uncertainty gnawed at him, but he knew they couldn't stay trapped here forever. With a gulp of air, he pushed the thought of the shadow creeping toward Emma aside and led the way. The hallway felt narrow, the air thickening as they approached her room. The door loomed ahead, slightly ajar, an invitation shrouded in darkness. Mark hesitated, his heart hammering, the chilling echo of laughter haunting his ears. He could feel the house watching, waiting. It was disconcerting. "Stay close," he warned as he nudged the door open. The room was dim, the curtains drawn tight, casting elongated shadows against the walls. Emma's bed sat unnaturally still. The stuffed bear, battered and worn, perched precariously at the corner, as if it were guarding a secret. With trembling hands, Mark flicked on the light switch, and the room illuminated, revealing no creature lurking, no shadow of horror. For a moment, relief washed over him. But then, the small mirror on the dresser captured his attention. It appeared to have moved, shifted from its resting place. "Did you see that?" Sarah asked, her voice barely a whisper, gauging the air with the same apprehension. Mark approached the mirror. It was unlike the antique one he'd seen upstairs. This one was cracked and stained, whispering forgotten memories. He hesitated, then leaned in. The surface shimmered, showing not just his reflection, but something lurking behind him, dark and foreboding. He instinctively turned, facing a wall of emptiness. Nothing. Nothing but the increasingly frigid air that wrapped around them like a noose. "It's just a mirror," he mumbled, trying to sound braver than he felt. But the silence that followed was deafening, and the atmosphere felt thick with malevolence. Behind him, in the dim light, something stirred. Sarah's gaze shifted, and he turned just in time to catch the indiscernible shape darting in the corner of the room. It was coming for them. "Mark, there!" she screamed, her voice slicing through the tension. Before he could react, the shadow elongated, stretching like a claw ready to burst forth. And then, it spoke. "You shouldn't have come here." The air dropped in temperature, their breath visible as they stared at the figure forming from the darkness. It was a forsaken specter, its face twisted in agony, eyes voids of despair. The children's laughter echoed, an eerie chorus melting into unholy whispers. Mark lunged forward, shielding Sarah, but it wouldn't let them go without a fight. The entity surged, pressing down, and the world spun around them. Shadows clawed and grasped as the walls seemed to pulse with life. "Get out! Get out!" he shouted again, trying to shatter the choking darkness that threatened to pull them under. It wrapped around his throat, stealing his breath. Just as hope began to flicker and fade, the lights flickered violently, revealing flashes of the room in chaotic bursts. Mark spotted the window, the last threshold to freedom. "Now!" he yelled, pulling Sarah with him as they bolted toward it. But the laughter returned, sharper, louder, a derisive sound that echoed of inevitable doom. They reached the window, only to find it sealed securely, as if the house itself had fortified their escape. "No!" Mark cried, slamming his fists against the glass, desperation flooding his senses. He turned back, facing what could only be described as an exponential spread of nightmarish torment. And then it revealed itself fully, a looming silhouette that engulfed the very light of the room. And in its grasp, it had something. A flicker of movement back in the corner, the stuffed bear flopped down, seemingly animated. Emma's name hung in the air like a death knell as Mark realized this darkness wasn't just a haunting, it had marked them. In this house, they were not the hunters, but the prey. As the shadows began to close in, a chilling voice echoed within their minds. "You belong to us now." And the night was just beginning. What had they truly awakened? The shadow surged forward, malice swirling in its misty form. Mark's heart raced, pounding against his chest like a warning drum. He felt Sarah's grip tighten on his arm, and the fear in her eyes mirrored his own as the entity enveloped them in its dark embrace. "We can't stay here," he shouted, adrenaline coursing through him. He spun away from the window, seeking another way out, yet each direction felt like a trap. The walls breathed, closing in as despair dripped like ice down his spine. Behind him, the figure morphed further, twisting into shapes more grotesque with each flicker of light. It seemed to thrive on their panic, drawing power from their fear. Mark's gaze darted around, looking for something, anything, that could help them escape this living nightmare. "Emma, Jake," he called again, desperation lacing his voice. "Where are you?" The laughter echoed back, haunting and sadistic. "They are ours, just like you soon will be." The voice slithered into the air, cold and twisted, whispering promises of torment. "Get away from us!" Sarah cried, her voice trembling. In a moment of defiance, she yanked Mark towards the dresser, towards the cracked mirror that had entranced him moments before. "Mark, look!" she gestured, her instinct guiding them toward the reflective surface. Where darkness seemed to swirl in chaotic patterns, a different realm trapped just behind the glass. It was then that Mark noticed the reflection wasn't just their horror-stricken faces. It was showing something else, an image, flickering, uncertain. He leaned closer, squinting at the apparition. "Is that?" he whispered, horrified. The vision unveiled their childhood home, but fractured, decayed. Emma and Jake were there, but they stood in a field of shadows, their tiny forms shivering under a sky that swirled with ominous clouds. Fear clawed at Mark's gut. "Emma, we can see you!" he yelled, but no sound passed through to the other side. Instead, the specter laughed, echoing Mark's shout, bending the frayed sound until it became a grotesque imitation. "Stop! You're hurting them!" Sarah yelled, anger igniting in her voice. She reached for the mirror, her determination palpable. "We have to break it!" But before she could act, the dark figure lunged again, slashing through the air, its form serpentine and fluid, wrapped around their bodies, squeezing the air from their lungs. The room spun as Mark struggled to breathe. "Stay away," he rasped, fighting against the constricting shadow. The entity hissed, its breath foul and acrid, the weight of despair settling heavily against him. In a sudden burst of clarity, he remembered the stories, the whispered warnings about mirrors and how they could trap souls. Mark's hand shot out toward the frame, his fingers brushing against the cold glass. "We need to break it, Sarah. Help me." They nodded to each other, driven by determination, and slammed their palms against the surface simultaneously. A crack rippled through the glass, spiderwebbing outward. The entity shrieked, a sound like nails skittering across a chalkboard, as the room began to tremble. "Do it, now!" Mark screamed, feeling the grasp of darkness tightening. With all their might, they jabbed into the mirror again and again. Each hit produced a spark of light, illuminating their surroundings, showing a glimmer of the world beyond. The shadow reeled, faltering as the mirror fought back, fighting against its hold. Suddenly, the room erupted in a blinding flash. Mark felt a pull, like being yanked from a dark dream. And then, silence. They stood in an empty space, light pouring in from somewhere above, illuminating nothing but the smooth surface of the floor. Mark's breath came in sharp gasps, disoriented and terrified. "Where are we?" Sarah whispered through trembling lips, scanning the barren space. "Emma, Jake," Mark called, his heart racing. The air felt electric, crackling with intensity. But the laughter hadn't gone. It lingered, like a hangman's noose around their throats. "Can we go back?" he asked, the overwhelming fear rising. But a gnawing feeling settled in his gut. Something about this place felt wrong. A voice echoed around them, disembodied, laughing in dark delight. "You should have stayed. You think you can escape?" Mark's heart sank as shadows crept back into view. He realized with dawning horror that perhaps they weren't free at all, and that the house was just waiting for its next move. Could they find Emma and Jake in time, or had they signed their own fates by awakening the darkness? As the shadows encircled them once more, a sinister rasp asked, "What have you brought back?" The shadows thickened, coiling around Mark and Sarah like a tightening noose. The laughter echoed again, mocking their struggle, feeding off the anxiety that pulsed through the air. "What have you brought back?" the voice taunted, curling through the space like a cat playing with its prey. Mark felt a chill race across his skin, sharp and electric. His eyes darted in every direction, searching desperately for an escape, but all he saw were endless shadows swirling around them. "Sarah, we need to move, now!" Mark shouted, panic rising in his voice. He could feel it, the depthless void that lay in wait, hungry for them. But where could they go? The void was everywhere and nowhere at once. "Look!" Sarah pointed towards a flicker of light at the edge of the shadows. There they saw an outline, a door, slightly ajar, glimmering with the promise of escape. Hope surged within him. They had to reach it. "Come on," Mark urged, taking Sarah's hand. They lunged forward, but only a few steps in, the shadows reached out, clawing at their ankles. They stumbled, nearly losing their balance, as the darkness threatened to pull them back into its embrace. "Keep going," Sarah cried, gritting her teeth as she pulled herself forward, an urgency sparking her resolve. Mark nodded, adrenaline kicking in. They charged toward the door, the murmur of their enemies clawing at the edges of their sanity. Just as they neared the threshold, a surge of despair washed over them. The shadows congealed, blocking their path, morphing into twisted faces that echoed their fears. Each face dripped and melted, whispering secrets only meant for the damned. "They won't let us go," Mark gasped, struggling against the heavy darkness that clung to them. As if to punctuate his fear, a shadowy figure emerged from the void, its eyes like burning coals feeding on their terror. "Turn back," the figure hissed, its voice a chilling wind. His heart thudded painfully against his ribs. "No, we will fight," Mark shouted, feeling courage surge through him. But as he shouted, the shadows bared fangs, hungry and relentless, tightening their grip around Sarah's waist. "Mark!" she screamed, eyes wide with terror as she struggled. The light from the door flickered, teasing hope, but the darkness lurked, gnawing at the edges of their resolve. Drawing on every ounce of strength, Mark tugged Sarah's arm, desperately trying to pull her free. "We have to break through," he rasped, determination anchoring his voice. As the shadows writhed and screamed, Mark's mind raced. There had to be something, some way to dispel the darkness that thrived on fear. He remembered the mirror. With every ounce of courage inside him, he chose to face the darkness. "Let her go!" he yelled, channeling everything he felt into those words. The shadows hissed, recoiling momentarily, as if startled. "No one leaves, not while we remain," the dark figure growled, its voice laced with fury. "Maybe not," he replied, "but I won't let my fear be your fuel." With that, he kicked his foot forward, sending a shockwave of defiance through his entire being. The force of his defiance rippled through the air. The shadow recoiled, but suddenly it lunged towards him, rage seeping from its every pore. "Foolish child!" it screamed, reaching with twisted claw-like fingers. Mark braced for impact, holding Sarah tightly. Then, in a moment of sheer desperation, as he faced the encroaching darkness, a realization struck him. They weren't just fighting for themselves, they were fighting for Emma and Jake. "We won't let you take them," Mark bellowed, resolute. The auras of fear and agony exploded outward, crashing against the walls of the unseen realm. Mark felt the energy shift, and in that instant, the shadows divided, allowing a sliver of light to penetrate the darkness. "Run!" he shouted, dragging Sarah forward toward the gleaming light. But the shadows writhed violently, screeching in furious denial, trying to claim them once more. As they barreled toward the door, a voice called out, "You cannot escape! You've brought us back!" A freezing chill coursed through Mark, instinctively forcing him to glance back. The dark figure loomed larger, mouth twisted in a sinister grin. "We'll see you soon." With a final push, they burst through the door and into another vacant room, slamming it shut behind them. Their breaths came in ragged gasps. But even as Mark leaned against the door, shaking in fear and adrenaline, the laughter echoed through the cracks, weaving a haunting promise that would not be forgotten. Somewhere in the shadows, Emma and Jake were still lost, and their time was running out. "What now?" Sarah whispered, eyes glassy with anxiety. Mark turned, knowing that the battle was far from over. "Now we find a way to save them before the darkness consumes us all." As he spoke, the shadows began to seep through the cracks of the door, and his heart raced anew. But what if this was all part of the plan? The room felt colder, the air thick with despair, as the shadows writhed, curling in like a predator stalking its prey. Mark and Sarah stood together, chests heaving, desperate for a moment to gather their thoughts. Panic-stricken breaths filled the silence. "Where do we even start?" Sarah's voice trembled, casting a glance around the dimly lit area. The flickering lights overhead struggled to break through the oppressive darkness, but the shadows felt almost sentient, pressing in closer. "We have to find a way to communicate with them," Mark said, invoking a spark of hope even as dread gnawed at his insides. He remembered the mirror, an old, cracked relic that had once been the centerpiece of his childhood home. It was said to reveal truths best left hidden. You think it will work? Sarah's voice was laced with skepticism, a reminder of the danger lurking just beyond their safe space. It's the only lead we have, Mark replied, determination hardening his resolve. If it can show us what the shadows want, maybe we can use it against them. With that, they moved cautiously through the eerie room toward the only wall that appeared slightly brighter than the dread surrounding them. The laughter echoed again, this time closer, as if it were mocking their every step. Stay close, Mark urged, tightening his grip on her hand. Each echo of sinister laughter felt like a claw scraping against his sanity. They stumbled upon the wall, its surface strange and uneven, as if it held back some unseen force. Was it a door? A trap? Mark reached out, fingers grazing the surface. A ripple flowed beneath his touch, a whisper of energy that felt unnervingly alive. "Mark!" Sarah gasped. He turned to find her pointing at an old bookshelf that leaned precariously against the other wall. Dust and cobwebs danced in the thin slices of light. There! The mirror! As they approached, their reflections flickered in the glass, fragmented and disjointed. Mark's heart raced. They searched those fragmented images for clarity. "Let's move it," he said, trying to mask the urge to run. Together, they heaved the old mirror from its dusty perch. A low groan resonated as the mirror creaked in protest, echoing the darkness that seemed determined to hold them back. Just as they positioned it against the wall, the laughter transformed into anguished wails, echoing through the space. The shadows quivered, recoiling as if the mirror emitted light. "Look," Sarah whispered, eyes widening. The surface of the mirror began to shimmer, rippling like water disturbed by a sudden storm. "Do you see that?" Mark pointed, heartbeat pounding in his ears. Suddenly, figures began to emerge, ghostly shapes swirling within the mirror's depths. Their faces twisted in pain and desperation, mouths moving but no sound escaping. "Help us!" The word emerged from the glass, chilling Mark to the bone. "Are those?" Sarah started, but her voice faltered as the realization washed over them. The shadows converged around the mirror, darker than ever, as if they were attempting to extinguish any flicker of hope. "No, you won't take them!" Mark shouted, instinctively placing himself between Sarah and the encroaching darkness. But it was too late. The shadows surged, a tidal wave of malevolence crashing against the mirror's fragile barrier. The room trembled, the ground pulsed, vibrating with anger. "Mark, get back!" Sarah screamed, as dark tendrils coiled around the mirror, snaking towards them, hungry and insatiable. A vision struck Mark, snapshots of Emma and Jake, their innocent faces filled with laughter before everything changed. The shadows were their enemies, but they were also leveraging that love against him, playing with his fears. "Break it!" he yelled, feeling adrenaline surge through him. "We need to break the cycle! We need to stop this!" "Mark, I don't!" But before Sarah could finish her thought, a rush of shadow engulfed her, dragging her back toward the portal they had just escaped from. "No!" Mark lunged forward, gripping Sarah's wrist and pulling with all his strength. The shadows howled in protest, and as he fought against their icy grasp, an idea took form. "Together!" he shouted, igniting the embers of hope buried deep within their chests. "Push back! We can shatter this darkness!" With a shared cry, they slung their fear toward the mirror, channeling their pain and desperation into one decisive moment. The shadows howled louder, a cacophony that rattled the very air around them. It couldn't end here, not like this. As a blinding light erupted from the mirror's surface, darkness collided against light in an explosion of chaos. Mark felt the world around him twisting, pulling apart, as the shadows lost their grip. But as the light burst forth, illuminating the terror, a new darkness growled low and ominous, echoing a promise that would haunt them. This is only the beginning. Mark's breath caught in his throat, dread pooling in his stomach. They had broken through, but what awaited them on the other side? Mark! Sarah's voice pierced the chaos, drawing his attention back to her. What's happening? Something's coming! Before he could reply, the world around them shifted once more, a vacuum of darkness threatening to consume everything in its path. And in the heartbeat that followed, the light faded. Mark realized with a sinking feeling, they had awakened something far worse than before. What did we unleash? He whispered, as the shadows surged anew. The darkness swallowed everything, a suffocating blackness that wrapped around Mark and Sarah like a heavy, wet blanket. The mirror flickered, then dimmed, its once bright surface now appearing as an obsidian void. A cold dread seeped into Mark's bones, rooting him to the floor. Mark! Sarah's voice broke through the thick air, trembling and distant. He turned, but all he could see were shadows shifting and coiling, seeking to entrap them. Where are you? Right here. Panic rose in his throat as he reached out blindly, praying to find her, to pull her back into his grasp. The laughter returned, but it was deeper, more menacing. It vibrated in the very marrow of his bones, rattling him to his core. It echoed in the void, creating an unsettling rhythm that matched his quickening heart. Mark! Sarah's voice now laced with terror. I can't see! I can't move! I'm coming! Just hold on! He ran, arms outstretched, feeling for her presence. But the darkness clawed at him, wrapping around his limbs like icy fingers. Mark stumbled, falling to his knees against the cold, unforgiving ground. Grasping at the dirt, he felt a pulse beneath his fingers, a heartbeat that was not his own. With a jolt, Mark pulled himself up, focusing on the faint shimmer of the remaining light from the mirror. It was their only chance. With every ounce of strength, he pushed against the shadowy tendrils that snaked around him, determined to reach the glimmering hope amidst despair. "Sarah!" he shouted, his voice a raw plea filtered through the anguish surrounding him. There was no sound to guide him, but somehow he felt her fighting too. "Trust me, follow the sound of my voice." In a fleeting moment between panic and hope, he felt her hand grasp his, warm against the icy dread. "Mark, it's pulling me." Not for long. With a surge of power born from desperation, Mark yanked her toward him, adrenaline igniting an unbreakable bond between them. They raced toward the mirror, but the shadows grew restless, thrashing like a trapped beast. They encircled the mirror, clawing at its surface, desperate to be released from confinement. The mirror pulsed eerily, as though alive, and Mark could see flickers of images behind the glass, twisted faces crying out for help, distorted by fear. Now! With one unified push, they threw themselves against the mirror. A blast of energy reverberated outward, a shockwave that twisted the looming darkness. The shadows hissed, their whispers turning to guttural growls, anger and desperation echoing around them. Suddenly, the mirror cracked, a web of fractures spidering out from where they impacted. A brilliant light burst forth, spilling warmth into the cold air. Mark and Sarah braced themselves, feeling the pull of the chaos swirl around them. But from the fractured mirror, something else emerged. A shape shrouded in a swirling miasma. A figure that looked both familiar and utterly alien stood before them, eyes gleaming with a predatory hunger that sent chills racing down Mark's spine. "What? Who are you?" he stammered, heart pounding as he realized this was no mere shadow, but a collector of souls. The shape twisted, revealing a grotesque smile that seemed to split its face. "I am the one who feeds on despair," it intoned, voice like gravel scraping on bone. "And you have invited me here." "No!" Mark shouted, instinctively stepping in front of Sarah. The dark swirl seemed to throb, pulsing with energy, the air thick with the smell of decay. "We won't let you take anyone! Foolish mortals! You think you can resist!" The entity lunged forward, reaching for them with arms stretched wide, shadows clawing at their heels. Mark's mind raced. They were just one heartbeat away from the abyss, and yet he had to act. If they could break the abyss open once more, maybe they could escape. He looked to Sarah, dread and determination reflected in their eyes. "We have to shatter it completely, together." As the dark figure advanced, they prepared to channel their fear and love into one final stand. But in that moment, shadows swirled, taking on a new form, creating 100 faces of lost souls pleading for freedom. "Let them go!" The defiance in Mark's voice thundered against the storm. As they summoned all their strength, a realization struck Mark. They weren't just fighting to escape. They needed to confront the darkness, face the truth of their fears, and shatter the chains binding those souls. The air crackled with electric tension. "Now!" The words were a shout, a battle cry. Together they thrust their energy toward the figure, driving the point home. Shadows writhed and twisted as the brilliance enveloped them. But as the entity shrieked, its form splintering under the power of their love, Mark felt a tug beneath his soul, a whisper from the mirror, an invitation from the darkness still lurking. "Mark," a voice murmured sweetly, laced with promises and sorrow. His heart faltered. Was this a chance to save everything? Or was it a lure meant to drag him deeper into despair? He hesitated, staring into the swirling chaos, uncertainty gripping him like ice. "Mark, we have to go, now!" Sarah's command jolted him, anchoring him back to reality. And in that moment, he knew what lay ahead would be more treacherous than he dared to imagine. They had to act instantly before darkness consumed them all. What awaits us? He wondered silently. As the light flickered, shadows closing in once again. Fear coiled in his stomach, urging him to dive deeper. But just how far into the darkness were they willing to go to emerge alive? With a final crashing wave, they hurtled toward the unknown. As they barreled through the crack in the mirror, an icy wind blasted them, throwing them into a chaotic swarm of darkness. Mark and Sarah tumbled, landing hard on a sprawling, cold floor. The air was thick, filled with the scent of mold and desperation. Around them, shadows whispered in voices that seemed to claw at their sanity. "What is this place?" Sarah gasped, trying to catch her breath, eyes wild as they scanned the oppressive darkness. I don't know," Mark replied, heart racing. "But we need to keep moving." They got back on their feet, but the oppressive weight of the shadows pressed down on them like a leaden blanket. The whispers grew clearer, twisting into tales of torment. One voice rose above the others, its tone sharp and piercing. "You shouldn't have come here." Mark's pulse quickened. "Did you hear that?" Sarah nodded, dread pooling in her stomach. "What do we do? Where do we go?" Just try to ignore them," he said, though doubt gnawed at him. "We need a way out." They started to walk forward, the floor slick beneath them. With each step, cold fingers seemed to graze their skin, as if something unseen was toying with them. Mark felt a chill crawl up his spine, almost like the darkness had a mind of its own, a hunger that was awakening. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream erupted from above, echoing off the walls. Mark and Sarah froze, terror rooted in their hearts. The distant sound drew closer, loud, frantic, desperate. "Mark, what if?" "It's—" "Don't say it," he snapped, pulling her closer. But the scream morphed into a laugh, sharp and cruel. "More souls to play with," the voice cackled. The shadows thickened, forming tendrils that reached for them as if the very air was alive with malicious intent. "Run!" Mark yelled, grabbing Sarah's hand, pulling her into a sprint. They dashed through a haze of black, weaving between cracked pillars that loomed ominously in the dimness. The sound of laughter echoed behind them, a cacophony of tormented souls urging them onward. Ahead, a soft glow beckoned, illuminating a doorway framed in crimson. Hope flickered. Could it be an exit? As they moved toward the light, a familiar figure emerged before them, silhouetted against the faint glow. "Leave this place!" It was an old woman, her eyes sunken, her voice trembling with authority. "You don't belong here!" "Who are you?" Mark panted, fear creeping back in veins. "I am the watchman of the lost," she said, stepping closer, shadows swirling around her like a storm. "I hold the key, but you must face your shadows to claim it." "What do you mean?" Sarah asked, breathless. "We just want to get out." "No." The woman's fingers stretched out, her expression filled with sorrow. "Your fight isn't over. The darkness feeds on your fears, and until you confront them, it will never let you go." Mark's stomach twisted. Each chilling word felt like shackles, binding them tighter to their fate. "Confront our fears?" Mark echoed, glancing at Sarah, whose face was pale and drawn. "Yes," the woman said, her tone urgent, "but make no mistake. Only one of you can leave this place unscathed." "Unscathed?" Sarah's voice broke. "What do you mean?" Darkness crackled around them, shadows shifting and stretching, growing more threatening. It felt as if the barrier between them and whatever nightmarish fate awaited was delicate and could shatter at any moment. "Face the truth," the woman warned, dread pooling in her eyes, "or lose everything you love." Mark felt a surge of panic. He glanced at Sarah, who was trembling. Could they really survive this? Did the darkness intend to tear them apart? Suddenly, a scream echoed again, but this time it was closer, clearer. His name! Mark! They stood frozen, longing to run back into each other's arms. But now, the truth loomed over them like a shadow. What would they uncover? What choices would they make? "Make your decision!" The woman's voice rang out, piercing through the chaos. They were trapped, faced with a choice that would determine everything. Would they confront the darkness together or risk losing each other forever? As the shadows beckoned with hungry whispers, Mark felt the heaviness of the choice weighed down on him. What lay on the other side of the truth? And at what cost would it be revealed? The shadows writhed and pulsed, almost alive, feeding off their fear. Mark's heart raced as he grasped Sarah's trembling hand tightly. "We have to face it, together," he said, with a resolve he didn't quite feel. Her eyes reflected uncertainty, but they also brimmed with a flicker of hope. "Together," she echoed, her voice steadier than before. The oppressive darkness seemed to recoil at their combined determination. The laughter faded, replaced by an eerie silence that wrapped around them like a thick fog. It sent shivers down Mark's spine, yet he pressed onward, drawn to the woman who held the key to their escape. "Tell us what we need to do," Mark demanded, his voice echoing in the void. The woman sighed, her frail form enveloped in shadows. "You must face your fears, but be warned, what you discover may be worse than the darkness itself." As she spoke, the air stirred, thick with latent terror. Dark images flickered at the edges of Mark's mind, clawing to the forefront. Echoes of his childhood, failures, broken dreams. He blinked and tried to push them back, but the shadows were insistent. A sudden burst of light illuminated a corner behind them, revealing a hideous specter, its mouth open in a grotesque grin, eyes hollow yet bright with malice. "You think you can escape," it hissed, a slippery voice tainted with mockery. Mark stumbled backward, pulling Sarah with him. No, this can't be happening. He felt the terror creeping back, wanting to crush him under its weight. "Mark!" Sarah's voice pierced through the panic. "Focus! We have to confront it!" "Confront what?" he shouted, desperation clawing at his throat. "I can't! Look at it!" But Sarah's eyes were fierce. "Whatever it is, it's not real unless we let it be. We've faced so much before. We can do this." The specter loomed closer, its breath cold against their skin. Mark felt an overwhelming sense of despair washing over him. It felt too heavy, like he was submerged in darkness. Each breath grew harder, the air tightening around his chest. Suddenly, a sepulchral voice echoed in the shadows, weaving through their minds. "Face what haunts you. Only then will you find peace." Old memories crashed like waves. His father's disappointed glare, the sting of betrayal from friends who left him behind, moments of vulnerability laid bare. Each recollection was sharper, more painful than the last. The woman, still watching, urged them on with a subtle nod. "Remember, the truth holds power." Mark clenched his fists, feeling a surge of defiance. "I will not let this define me." In a flash, he stepped forward, facing the specter. Its cruel smile morphed, doubt washed over its features. "You think you can stand against your past?" "I don't just think it," Mark replied, voice steadying with conviction. "I know I can." The specter roared, a sound that made the darkness tremble. "Then face it. Your fear, your guilt, what are you hiding from?" Mark shut his eyes, letting the memories flood back. With each breath, he embraced them. His father's disapproval, the sting of loneliness, the feeling of unworthiness. As tears streamed down his cheeks, he whispered, "I am not defined by you." With each word, a bright light shimmered around him, pushing back the shadow. He felt Sarah's hand tightening around his, her strength flowing into him. Together, they yelled in unison, their voices echoing through the haze. The specter screeched, a sound of anguish that reverberated through the very fabric of their reality. Fragmented images blurred into a single vision, a kaleidoscope of their fears, melting into a mixture of light and dark. The darkness quaked violently, and then silence fell. In the sudden calm, the air shifted, heavy with anticipation. Gazing around, they now noticed there were other doorways emerging from the darkness, glowing faintly in the distance. "We did it," Mark panted. But the question loomed, what lay behind those doors? What new fears awaited them? Sarah's eyes widened as she caught a glimpse of movement from one of the doorways. A shadow darted back, its eyes glinting with malice. "Mark, look!" The whispers returned, louder now, more insistent, each one a distorted reflection of their deepest fears. An echo sounded in the distance. "This is just the beginning." Heart racing, Mark realized their journey was far from over. They stood at the brink of the unknown, surrounded by shadows beckoning them deeper. Was there truly any escape? Or had they merely stepped into a netherworld more terrifying than the last? They took a step toward the nearest glow, but uncertainty clawed at their souls. What awaited them on the other side of the light? And would they both emerge intact? The moment they crossed through the glowing threshold, a blinding light engulfed them, illuminating not just the space around them, but also the very essence of their fears. Shadows melted away, revealing a vast, empty landscape where echoes of laughter and cries seeped through the cracks between worlds, soft whispers mixing with the cries of the damned. For a second, the chaotic storm simmered, and they stood hand in hand, hearts racing in unison. "Mark, what is this place?" Sarah gasped, eyeing the eerie void that stretched endlessly into the horizon, a mixture of ethereal light and insidious darkness. "It's a reflection of everything we faced," Mark replied, realizing in this moment of clarity that each door was a memory that laid bare their fears. Fear of failure, abandonment, even fear of loss. "We have to be ready for what we discover." As they stepped forward, the world around them shimmered, each step resonating with vibrations that were all too familiar. The shadows that had once threatened them began to flicker in and out of view, teasing, whispering tales they had tried to forget. A voice, haunting yet familiar, echoed around them. "Mark, Sarah." It engulfed them like a blanket of dread, pulling them deeper. "Mom?" Mark stumbled, the name cutting through the air like a knife. His heart dropped as images of his childhood swirled before him. That sweet smile, the warmth of home, then the piercing pain of loss. "Mom, where are you?" Desperation clawing at him. Suddenly, the air thickened, and a figure emerged from the shimmering light. It was her, his mother, ethereal yet tangible, a swirling mix of warmth and pain. "Mark," she said gently, her eyes radiating love yet holding sorrow. "You must choose. Do you want to stay in this false reality, carrying your guilt, or face the truth of what happened?" "I want to be free," he cried, but doubt seethed through him. "But what does that mean?" "Face it," she replied. "Let go of the burden you've carried so long." In that moment, the shadows grew restless, writhing in confusion, feeding off his turmoil. They grew darker, more oppressive, closing in on him and Sarah, a suffocating entity cast in malevolence. "Not now! We can't lose this fight!" Sarah shouted, grounding him in the crushing reality. Grasping each other's hands, they turned toward the darkness. Together, they advanced, shaking off the shadows that festered at the edges of their minds. Mark steeled himself, heart racing, digging deep into courage buried beneath years of pain. "I'm not ashamed of crying anymore. I miss you, Mom, but I can't let that stop me." His words brought forth a crackle of energy that rippled through the air. With every second, the vision of his mother grew brighter, and the shadows faltered slightly. "I love you, Mark. Move toward the light. Find your truth." Her voice echoed, resonating with conviction and empathy. Then, from the depths of the blackness, 1,000 voices melded together, rising in a cacophony of despair. "You cannot escape!" they screamed, clawing toward them, memories twisting into nightmares. As the darkness lunged, Mark and Sarah stood tall. The shadows encircled them, whispering their worst fears. Guilt, unworthiness, the empty ache of loss. Each whisper threatened to flatten them under its weight. But just as they felt themselves falter, something shifted within them, a surge of strength, fueled by love. "Not today!" Mark shouted defiantly, igniting a flame of courage that illuminated their path. "We choose to face you," Sarah shouted, every fiber of her being radiating raw determination. Their combined power illuminated the space around them, shattering the shadows like glass. With one final push, their energy collided with the darkness, creating a shockwave that reverberated through the void, and the malevolent whispers turned to desperate wails. The shadows recoiled, splitting apart like thick fog breaking under sunlight. Suddenly, the landscape shifted again, reforming into a pastoral scene that felt achingly familiar, their childhood home, filled with laughter, warmth, and love. The light poured in through the windows, illuminating every room. Their fears stood there, transformed, taking the form of soft reminders, no longer burdens. "Look!" Sarah shouted, pointing at their children, Emma and Jake, who stood by the door, grinning wide. Mark felt a rush of overwhelming relief, tears blurring his vision. We did it! We faced the darkness together. As they rushed toward their children, a gentle warmth enveloped them. But past and pain weren't erased. They had simply transformed, reshaped into lessons and memories they could carry with pride. "Welcome home," Emma said, eyes sparkling. Completely enveloped in love and acceptance, they stepped forward to embrace their children, grateful to hold them tight. The darkness that had once enveloped their lives began to recede, becoming nothing more than a whisper behind them, haunting but harmless. They had emerged intact, united and empowered. And then, as easily as that, the void faded, leaving behind a profound peace that washed over them like gentle rain after a long storm. Holding each other tight, they watched as the remnants of shadows scattered into the ether, the echoes of fears distantly fading but never entirely leaving. Mark smiled through his tears, realizing that they would always be a part of him, but they no longer held dominion over his heart. "Together," he whispered to Sarah, and they both gazed down at Emma and Jake, who were a beacon of love, a testament to resilience. Now they could finally breathe. "Together," they echoed, stepping forward into the light of a new beginning, hand in hand as a family, armed with the strength born of facing their deepest fears. But deep in the shadows, whispers began to swirl once more, the darkness never fully gone, always waiting, always watching. It would be up to them to remain vigilant, for the shadows were patient. Mark knew, as they finally turned to walk into the warmth of their home, that their journey was only just beginning. So folks, if you want to know what happens next, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. This is the moment to show your support and hit the like button now to help us reach more people. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what's to come. Did they truly conquer their fears, or is there more darkness lurking? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's spread the word. This journey isn't over yet. Mark knew, as they finally turned to walk into the warmth of their home, that their journey was only just beginning. So folks, if you want to know what happens next, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel. This is the moment to show your support and hit the like button now to help us reach more people. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about what's to come. Did they truly conquer their fears, or is there more darkness lurking? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let's spread the word. This journey isn't over yet.